Okay, good evening and welcome. Formally, once again, some of you would have gone through the welcome earlier, but once again, may I, on behalf of the Learning Festival and Wellbe Work team, welcome all of you to this wonderful, wonderful evening. It's a very historic evening, right? Because for two things. One is this wonderful platform that's going to take place, the knowledge exchange platform, right? One of fantastic topic. Second, also because something called IPL gets launched today, but that's secondary. This is primary, right? This is what we've all been waiting for the last 2.5 weeks. The team of Learning Festival and Wellbe Works has been working on this, right? And we take this opportunity to welcome each one of you. We have people from different places today, all across India, right? We've got people from Sharjah, Dubai, Canada, Australia, right? A whole lot of places that people are joining in to listen to this fabulous speaker. Friends, I'm Jebby John, and I'm privileged to be one among the 9 people who are the founders of this wonderful platform, this knowledge exchange platform called the Learning Festival, right? This is one platform which is a direct, output of the Corona times, the difficult times that we are in. I'll give you some more detail about the kind of platform this is. But before this, right, I'd like you to watch a small film, a really short film, on what has been happening on this platform called the Learning Festival thus far. We've had 5 interesting speakers who've gone through sessions with us, and I'm going to request my colleague to put up a short film which will capture what has happened so far. Okay, so that was the Learning Festival thus far, something that started off during the peak of the Corona lockdown, right? We've had 5 internationally acclaimed, fabulous speakers coming up and talking on this platform. But there are 3 differences from what we've done thus far to what we are doing today, right? And I'll run you through those 3 differences as time goes by, right? The first difference, of course, is for the first 5 programs of the series, we've been handling it alone. But today, we have another team that is co-presenting this entire effort with us, right? That's the first difference, right? And this team is from Wellbe Work, a fabulous organization. You should hear about this organization from one gentleman, right, who's actually a founder member of that organization, right? He's called Dr. Thaddeus Alfonso, right? He's a mental health professional with over 17 years of experience in teaching, research, and consulting, right? As a mental health professional, he's been a consultant to many institutions, including WHO, UNICEF, UNDP, the European Union, USAID, and of course, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Right? He's done over hundreds of well-being workshops for many Fortune 500 corporations. He's also a practicing psychotherapist and life coach involved in health and well-being, training and teaching mental health professionals, right? So we call him TAD, because Dr. Thaddeus Alfonso is not a name that all of us could pick up that quickly, right? To us, simply put, he's the brilliant TAD, right? So just to speak a little bit, a quick couple of lines about his organization called Wellbe Work, may I call on stage Dr. TAD. All yours, sir.
Good evening to all. Thank you, Jebby John, for giving me the opportunity to talk a little about Wellbe Work. So Wellbe Work is an organization which is an employee assistance organization that empowers other firms to enhance employees' health and well-being. So for this purpose, we try to collaborate with, or rather we collaborate with organizations to provide counseling services and related training and consulting. So our vision is, this organization has a vision of like healthy and happy employees across nations in any organizations for that matter. So for this, we envision to provide a holistic suite of end-to-end well-being programs and focused on physical, cognitive, psychological, social, and spiritual well-being of employees, and thereby engage them and productively, and retention and the quality of life of the employees and organizations. So we have over 2,500 licensed mental health professionals across nations who are ready to provide these services across organizations in the world. So that is a little bit about the WellBe work. And I think with that, there is a website already there, wellbework.com, and people will get to know more about it much later. So thank you, Jebi, for giving this opportunity. And I am getting back to Jebi to introduce Anjali. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Really kind of you. Fantastic niche to be working in, right? Mental well-being. What a great place to be working in. And I'm sure you're going to have great success in your endeavors, right? With close to 2,500 medical professionals already listed in, it's going to be a great enterprise. Friends, now that's the first difference that I was speaking about, right? The fact that we have a co-presenting team with us this time. The second difference is that the first 5 speakers have all been international speakers not based in India, right? They've been all international speakers not based in India, right? Basically Firangs, right? We've had people from Australia, we've had a speaker from Spain, we've had a couple of speakers from the US, from Singapore, right? And they were all speaking on very focused, specific topics, wherein we connected them to a highly curated audience, right? Which means we pre-check the audience, we make sure that the audience is a fit for that particular talk, and then we ensure we brought in only about between 15 to 135 odd people for any talk, right? But this is different. Today too, we have an international speaker, but this international speaker is based out of our very own country, and that's something to be really proud of, right? And that's something to be greatly proud of. And today the topic is all about us. It's not very technical, it's not very specific, but this topic is going to be something that's going to interest everyone, which is why we've opened it out to college students, we've opened it out to teachers, right? We've opened it out to a whole lot of young professionals, right? Who are going to make the economy move on as life goes on, right? So it is my proud privilege, while explaining the second difference, right, to get into introducing our speaker for the evening. Before that, if us as Learning Festival needs to continue to bring such programs to you, right, we only are requesting one help from you. One is to go out and write about us. Just use the hashtag Learning Festival, tweet about us, write about us on Facebook, let people know about us. Second is, right, we would like you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, because that matters to us. If we need to become an influencer, right, if we need to become somebody, a platform that more and more people are ready to share their knowledge on, we need to have a certain number of subscriptions on YouTube. So this is a request. Even while this program is on, even while the session is on, right, we'd like you to go on into YouTube, check out our channel, Learning Festival, and kindly subscribe. That's the request I'm going to leave you with, and then get into the big thing, which is introducing our rock star for this evening, right? Trust me, I've been given about 7 sheets to introduce this wonderful person, and I'm not going to use any of that, because I had that unique opportunity. I had that privilege to, just before this, speak to her for about 15 minutes. And I'm going to draw my introduction from what I saw of this wonderful lady in those 15 minutes, right? I'm not going into whatever has been given to me, right? She's a phenomenal motivational speaker, identity advocate, and entrepreneur, right? Who's spoken on so many platforms. All that doesn't matter. Nothing matters, because today she's coming live to you, and you can experience what a powerful, phenomenal speaker she is, right? To me, she's a Wonder Woman. She's a superhuman, right? That's how I would like to look at her, because for somebody who's gone through all that she has gone through and still go out and achieve so much, friends, I don't want to spoil it by giving all those technicalities about her, right? She heads the, e-commerce platform for Indian terrain and a whole lot of things. Nothing matters, because for me, those 15 minutes of interaction that I had with her was an eye-opener by itself. And I believe that I'd like to bring that unadulterated eye-opener to each of you without spoiling you with, with a whole lot of things about her. I would just leave it by saying this is one thing. To me, she is a superhuman, right? To me, she's somebody who's out there and ready to make a difference, right? Because she wants to give back. She calls this giving back, right? By speaking about her life, by weaving in small stories about her life, she wants to give back that confidence to so many of us who may be low on confidence, right? Who may feel, am I doing the right thing? Who may feel, am I in the right business? Am I in the right line? Ladies and gentlemen, sit back and spend the next 40 minutes listening to this individual, because she is what you need, the dictionary of the word resilience, right? Simple. If you want to know about resilience, just look up on who is Anjali Rajgopal, because she's our speaker for you today, right? A fabulous lady, a phenomenal achiever. Ladies and gentlemen, without much ado, may I present to you Anjali Rajgopal. Anjali, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Jabi. That was a fantastic introduction. I don't know how I would be able to follow that act. I must say that was, I'm just so thrilled with it that I could, sit back and listen to you for the rest of the evening. So just before we get started, a big thank you to Dr. Thaddeus Alfonso, who's known me for some time and been extremely supportive and allowed this event to happen. A big thank you to the Learning Festival as well as Wellbe Work. And I've been told not to go through an entire laundry list of individuals that I'm extremely impressed with and that I would love to chat more to, but I guess we have to get right into it. So let's talk about resilience, since that's what's been set up for the day. But I'm sure that you've all heard the word being bandied about, talked about, especially over the last few months, especially after COVID has hit, especially after we've all been, nations have been brought to their knees. Businesses have shut down, people have lost jobs. But what I want to share with you today is my tryst, love-hate affair, if you will, with resilience that started when I was 18 years old. At that time, I don't think knew enough to articulate or to know what resilience actually meant as a word. It just happened to me. And to me, life has always been about resilience, building it, discovering it, and carrying on. So I'm going to take you with me through a story, and from when I was, I'm sure all of you, some of you might be 18, some of you may have been 18 not so long ago, but you know how we all are at that age, full of dreams, full of expectations, full of excitement, full of energy. And trust me, I was that and a whole lot more. I was a little bit of an overachiever in school. I was my parents' favorite. It was a charmed life, and I grew up in Chennai, and absolutely no complaints. And that's when I first got a taste of what resilience would actually mean or need from me. I don't know how many of you have watched a boxing match. I'm sure you've all heard of Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson or any of the greats, that have graced the boxing ring. But to me, boxing is probably the closest analogy that I can bring or see in terms of what life has had to offer, not just for me, but even for people around me. Because boxing is not about how many knockouts you place. It's about how many times you can get back up. So resilience is all about that. And when I was 18, I had no idea what was coming. So let me take you back to March 16th, 2002. And yes, so nobody do the maths about how long ago that was. But I was going to Bangalore with my mother. We had a driver driving the car. I was going to visit my grandmother who lived in Bangalore at that time. I was all set to push off to the US to start my undergraduate education. I was the first one in my family to have a plan to go abroad. Neither of my parents had actually been educated overseas. And I was just excited, was pretty much the only word I could think of. And then as we were on that innocuous journey to Bangalore, that one split second, my life changed. We were heading towards, this was actually when the highway had just been redone. So my driver was just swashbuckling his way down at a very high speed. And I was unfortunately sitting in front. Luckily though, I was wearing a seatbelt, but there were no airbags at that time. So we hit one of those huge big trucks because my driver ran an intersection. And that was when I think the first of resilience actually entered my life, or at least the need for it. Because the next thing I can remember is a very defining time when I heard my father's voice telling me my name, my age, what had happened, the date. He had said, "Your name is Anjali, there has been an accident, we're in Vellore," but I would forget. I would forget the next day. Apparently, this happened for 40 days. Because not just could I not remember his voice or his face, I couldn't actually see him because I was blind. And waking up to a life that was so different just a little while back was something that I don't think I could ever have imagined in my worst dreams. So that's when it all started, my love affair or hate affair with resilience. So that was, I was in and out of hospital in India for months. I, unfortunately, because of all the delay in, getting me in and out of hospital, I lost 75% of my eyesight, which continues to be the case even today. So but this, I actually came to know that I wouldn't get my eyesight a little while later. So we'll get into that. But what actually happened was I had 455 skull fractures, which is, a great big number if you're, counting candy, but not fun if you've got that many fractures in your face. So what I didn't realize at that time was my life was over as I knew it. The girl that I saw in the mirror every day and the girl that I told that the next day was going to be even better than the last was actually gone. And it was while I was lying in that hospital bed that I think I was slowly starting to realize it. And my first tryst with resilience came when I realized that while I didn't know what was going to happen the next day, I knew I just had to hold on one more day. Why? Because I had to hear my father's voice again. Why? Because I had to try to see him again. Why? Because I wanted to know if there was going to be a tomorrow. And I wasn't ready to give up or go to sleep, as they would call it. So then, I mean, good luck, if you will, came calling. And my father frantically went all over India looking for doctors to fix everything, right? Because they didn't just have to fix my face. They had to give me my face back, if that was ever possible. They had to give me my eyesight back, which was fast disappearing. I could not smell anymore, and I couldn't walk or move on my own. So what happened was nobody in India would take the case. So my father found two doctors, one in Germany, one in Chicago, both of which were doing what they called experimental surgery, which means they were going to try. And they had no problem telling me that ma'am, you need to sign a release form. Whatever happens, it's not on us. So I remember having to sign that paper with the little shaky vision that I had left and lying in that bed and realizing that every time I entered an operating theater after that, I was playing Russian roulette. But that was the only chance that I had. So my father and I left for Chicago, and where I signed those papers and said, okay, and I told those doctors, go ahead and give me your best shot. And unfortunately, though, these doctors had never seen me before, right? So I had landed there with things leaking from all parts of my brain. I had a cerebrospinal fluid leak. I was getting meningitis. It was, a bleep show, if you will. I remember just talking to my dad, and he would say, just hold on, this is all we know. And that, again, was another big, I wouldn't say a wake-up call, but my sort of journey into understanding that resilience was actually my only friend. In fact, when people now in retrospect call me successful or whatever, I can, in my life, rather than think about successes, can only think about the defining moments when I decided to stand back up again after being knocked down. So that's the journey we're going to go on, my friends. So then that happened. So Chicago happened. And I spent a year and a half in and out of hospital in Chicago. My dad, unfortunately, my mother was also hurt in the accident. So my father had to fly from India back to the US and to and fro. So I spent most of my time in the hospital alone. And for most of that time, I had my mouth wired shut because my jaws had splintered. So that's when you become uniquely aware about what life around you actually is and what expectations are in terms of what happens in reality. So that was when I couldn't speak, but I could hear everything. And my hearing became so acute that I started to notice that while I couldn't communicate with anyone, life was still calling out to me. it was still calling my name. And that, I guess, in a way, was my own kind of resilience. So I became best friends with all of the nurses in the hospital, because I've always been one of those people who tried to make the best of whatever I had. Little did I expect to be spending my formative years in an ICU. But, and I always look back at those ICU days fondly, because I think I was the only one who survived that ICU. Every other guy, the guy on the left and the guy on the right, every 2 days would die, as people in ICU tend to do. But I didn't. And every day that I stayed alive, I figured there was another reason to keep pushing forward. So the doctors did try their best. They did reconstructive surgery to whatever extent they could. But again, I repeat, they were building the face of a girl they had never seen before. So that, about a year into it, when I was still in hospital and I could finally go to the bathroom on my own, and I looked up to see the mirror, I realized I was looking at a stranger. And not just any stranger, a broken, damaged, devastated stranger. This was not a pretty girl. This was an ugly girl. This was a sad girl. This was a very tired girl. But, and you know what the worst part was? It wasn't even me. That wasn't me as a person. I was upbeat, I was excited, I was beautiful, I was popular, I was charismatic. That was all gone. That was history. And I had to now decide whether I wanted to make friends with this girl, let alone accept her, or fuse it into being one person. And that journey started a very, very long time ago. But when I started to engage with the girl in the mirror, as I often call her, even to this day, I realized that I was going to have to be a lot tougher than just physically tough. Because this is when life wasn't even giving me options I thought I had. It was giving me no options, and then even more darkness. So I then decided to, continue to march on in terms of finding out what was going to happen the next day. So my father and I continued to talk through these difficult times, and he was ready to accept me in whatever state I wanted to be. I could have stayed in a wheelchair. I could have gone back home to India. I could have curled up in a ball. But to me, that was never the life I dreamt of, and that was not the life I was going to accept. And this is one other thing that I want to say about resilience. Never accept something that you did not plan or chart out for yourself. Life does not have to decide for you. You always decide for yourself, and I always decided for myself. Regardless of the cards I was dealt, I always worked with them, worked around them, or played rummy with them. But my point always has been that I will choose what will happen with my life. So what happened next was always the big question. Now that the face was still damaged, my doctors would not do surgery they would only do it once every 12 months because they had to go in through my head, which is a very invasive surgery, and I was very young. So, and since a lot of it, like I'd mentioned earlier, was still, they were still experimenting with that kind of surgery, reconstructive, there were no sure outcomes. And I had planned to go to college. And there was such a huge chasm between going to university and the face that I had and the little vision that I had. And half of my faculties were not in place. There was so much of a gap between where I was and where I wanted to be that I realized that, again, the word which I know today to be resilience came back into play. So I remember, I'll take you all back to a time when my father and I were in Cleveland because we had gone to visit the famous Cleveland Clinic, which was going to be the last bastion of hope in terms of me getting my eyesight back. They had told me, Anjali, we will try. And that particular day, we had just heard that I wasn't going to get it back. And this was going to be the rest of my life, which meant that I could see very little tunnel vision from my right eye, which meant no driving, no being able to deal with crowds, forget about stairs, and forget about getting on a flight. And while I don't think I was overwhelmed entirely because I didn't quite think the whole situation through, I realized it was pretty bad. And then my dad asked me, what do you want to do about college? So I told him, I said, I still want to go. He said, are you sure with your face? Because at that time, my face, if I had shown, whenever I walked on the street without covering it up, there would be children who would run across the street with fear. That's how bad it was. And we all know that people in college, or at least young people in college, aren't the kindest in the world. So I knew that I would be opening myself up to a lot of scrutiny if I chose to enroll. But what we decided to do was go to the Sunglass Hut in Cleveland. And I bought 6 pairs of huge, oversized Kim Kardashian sunglasses, if anyone, and I'm sure she's very popular with the rest of you. So I found those sunglasses even before she did. And I decided to wear those sunglasses covering half of my face and decided to go to university. And because I had gotten an offer to do my undergraduate studies at one of the best universities in the world. This was the University of Chicago. It was right near where my hospital was. Everything seemed to me, the way I looked at it, glass half full, was working out in my favor. What I didn't bother to engage with was who was going to laugh at me, who was going to question about why I was wearing sunglasses day in and day out, because I didn't care. All I cared about was my dreams not being broken. And I was going to do whatever it took to, pursue that education, which I'd always planned for myself. So I always talk about when I started University of Chicago as my sunglass moment. And I spent 2 years of university living behind those sunglasses while people were wondering which princess I was from which country, or whether I needed an exorcist, or any of those exciting rumors. But that's how I started my 20s. And again, now when we talk about resilience in the times of COVID, that was my COVID. My life has been COVID when I think about it, time after time, because college wasn't the only hard part. There was the rest of life to deal with. So I got through university with audiobooks, learning, because I was finding it really hard to read at that time. It was like I couldn't see much. And it's not like they were going to change the syllabus for me. And I didn't want anyone to change the syllabus for me. I wanted to fight the good fight. I didn't want to go and run in the Paralympics. I didn't want to say, oh, I'm disabled now, or this is my disability, and I'm going to be condemned by it. I wanted to own it. I wanted to own that space, and I wanted to fight with the people who had all the eyesight in the world, everybody who could drive. I was like, you know what, I'm going to go for gold. And that is one thing that's always stayed with me. I've never accepted what life had to give, because life isn't very kind often. So on the other hand, I made some fantastic friends. I pledged a sorority at university. I then later transferred to California, where I met some fantastic people. I graduated in international relations, and I returned to India in 2007, I believe, at the end of 2007, beginning 2008. I then had the opportunity to work at Indian Terrain, where I currently work, but that was my first job. So that was when I found my love for public relations. So this is very interesting as an insight for someone who should have been hiding from the world because I was quote unquote ugly. But on the other hand, I chose to go on the offensive. So I said, if the world isn't going to figure out how to associate with me, I'm going to tell them how to associate with me. So I went and got a job, actually 3 jobs in media at the same time. So I actually hosted a show for NDTV Hindu, which was a big deal at that time. I was a radio host on Chennai Live, and I was a columnist on fashion, if you will, at Deccan Chronicle. Fashion was a passion for me. So I was like, I wasn't going to stay stuck in some space which defined whether I was pretty or I was ugly. I was just my aspirations. And for me, the connection between creation and aspiration has been resilience, because ultimately we all have to walk the talk, right? So I'll take you a little bit further down. So I had a wonderful career in media, and then I realized, as I often tend to do, that most of the game of business stands behind the camera. And I had my 1.5 years of validation. I wanted to know that I was going to be okay, camera or not, And I guess not many people feel the need to test that, but I felt the need to test it because I spent so much of my time struggling and wondering if I was actually going to be good enough. And whenever I have wondered if I'm going to be good enough, I've thrown myself back into the boxing ring, always, because that is the only way to figure out if you're going to make it. And if you get knocked down, you still do so with pride, right? So then I moved on I went back to the US, to NYU, where I met some fantastic professors. I did my MS in PR and corporate communication. And then I moved on to becoming an entrepreneur. I came back to India. I started my own PR agency called Touche. And that was another very defining moment, because most people thought I would come back and immediately work in my family business because it was safe. But I don't ever do things that were safe, right? Because I had already I had already planned never to back down. So it wasn't part of my personality at all. And I will definitely give a lot of credit to my parents, especially because compared to a lot of parents I know who want to protect their kids, when they knew I was at my most vulnerable was when they actually let me go, because they realized that with my condition, they could never protect me forever. I was going to have to learn to protect myself. So that's when resilience came in and became part of my existence. So when I wanted to become an entrepreneur, I never thought twice, and I mean, I'm telling you guys, it was none of this has been easy, but it has all been extremely rewarding. So I ran my PR company until I fell in love with e-commerce, and that is what I do today. So the last 4.5 years, I've been running the e-commerce division as well as the East Retail division, where in fact, pre-COVID, I traveled 23 days in a month to distant parts of the country. And in fact, I was recently in Nagaland to open a store there, which is something nobody ever expected me to do. I was that broken child who was going to, whom no one was going to look at and probably was going to be blind the rest of my life. I have just never accepted it. And when I recently started experiencing, when COVID happened, and I suddenly realized that people around me were now talking about resilience, which seemed to have been something that I had sort of married a long time ago. If anything, when people ask me, who are you married to? I should say I'm married to resilience. But in fact, this is the defining moments of my life when Jabi was so kindly saying such wonderful things about me. My wins have always been a result of how long I have managed to last in the ring. And I have fallen down many times. Not every relationship has worked out. Not every job has immediately been successful. Not everybody has thought I was, the smartest girl in the room. But I have always found it worth pressing on, living on to fight another day. And this takes me back to one very important, I guess, defining moment when I was undergoing my second or third surgery in Chicago. I had a wonderful doctor. His name was Dr. Pauly. Very handsome, which doesn't make any sense because plastic surgeons, that's almost like they're mocking you, right? Because they're so beautiful. And and every surgery of mine was like more than 24 hours. So, I had to be under a lot of anesthesia, obviously. And the anesthesiologist, I guess, had miscalculated some bits towards the end of the surgery. So before they had stapled up my skull, I started to wake up. And I think my doctor realized it. And I heard him say something to me, or at least this is what he was yelling, at least above the din of what else was going on. And he said, Anjali, I can only fight 50% of the battle. You have to fight the other 50%. And something really resonated at that moment when I realized that what he was telling me to do was not to go to sleep. Because even though my eyes were closed due to the swelling, if I had chosen to go to sleep in my head that day, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you. So the whole point, and again, I come back to resilience, is never, ever fall asleep, because there is going to be another tomorrow and you need to live. You need to live through this because there is always something better on the other side. I can't guarantee that it'll come soon, but I will guarantee that you will find it. And while I know that sounds trite, I am sharing all this with you because these are very, very personal stories to me. And I wanted to take you all on this journey because I didn't see my mother, for example, for 2 years because she was in hospital in India and I was in hospital in Chicago. And when things like this happen, like an accident like this, they can fracture families. People go very far away from one another. And I had to find my way back to her. I had to find my way back to my sibling. I had to find my way back to my friends who didn't know which girl they were talking to. And if it was literally like seeing somebody with a different face and then having to say, hey, Anjali, how are you doing? And people found it very hard to ask me how I was doing because they almost didn't want to hear the answer because my answer will never be simple, right? I'd never be able to say, oh, okay, I'm fine. It was always, my discussion should have been about resilience throughout every year. So when I look back on my journey so far and, I'm taking you through some defining moments of resilience, I feel the entire, at least the time that probably everyone is experiencing, whether it's business leaders, wondering whether their businesses are going to come out on the other side of this the same. Your businesses are not going to come out the same, but they're going to definitely come out different and perhaps even stronger. And I always believe that my resilience, or at least in whichever way I could articulate it, in whichever point of my life this past decade and a half I've spent, has always made me one version better than my previous self. Maybe not as pretty, maybe not as well dressed, not as confident, not with the right job, not with the right boyfriend. None of that has mattered. It has always given me something better because I've chosen to stay in the ring and I've never walked out. So this is the only thing that I leave with you all today. I don't know what my time looks like, but I do urge every one of you that is experiencing some sense of loss this COVID period, that resilience is definitely the magic word, and it is the only secret to success. So one thing that I wanted to also mention here, which I'm being prompted to do, is that in 2019 I actually started a nonprofit giving back initiative, which Debbie was mentioning in the beginning, called Anjali Rajgopal Official. So I mean, for lack of a better name, right? But a lot of the media calls me the Phoenix girl, but I think too many other people were called Phoenix besides the city. So I found a team, and I decided that, since with all of my experiences, I felt that I needed to give back to society. And in fact, this was emboldened by an opportunity to give a TEDx talk in December 2019. And with TED, often, as you all may know, since many of you probably watch them, is that it has to be an idea worth spreading. So when they asked me, Anjali, besides your life story, what is your idea worth spreading? I told them that identity is not a sum total of your physical and social attributes. It is, in fact, a tapestry of your entire aspirations, and it's a mosaic of your quest. And it is only a function of what you want to be. That is your identity. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what education you have. And I believe it is constantly evolving. So that was my idea worth spreading. And for some reason, I think a lot of people liked it. So that's what brought my passion to the front in terms of this giving back initiative. So I've started, not just in today's speech, but I've started working with a lot of professional organizations, and like the CII, for example, and education institutions. And I do one-on-one sessions, transformational sessions with people. This particular year, since we all seem to have this time that COVID has given us. So I have found, even in COVID, I have found opportunity. And this is, for example, like giving back to the community was not something that it's always something I wanted to do, but it's something that I never had the time to do because I was always busy with my corporate job and my startup, etc. But COVID has given me this opportunity to give back. And give back what? That understanding, that the power of resilience, and to let all of you know that your identities do not lie in what happens in COVID, or how your businesses land up, or what happens with your degree, or even if you choose to change your mind about who you marry. Okay, these are all decisions across the board are going to be tested during this time. And my only wish and prayer for everyone is that you can understand that resilience is the only thing that you need to come out on the other side, and the championship ring is waiting for you. So do you guys want to move on to questions?
Thank you so much. Anjali, that was simply fantastic. I mean, I took some time to come on because I was actually speechless. I mean, that's what one would call, I mean, I really don't know what to say. And I'm generally not speechless, right? I'm generally not a guy who is short for words. If at all, I speak 500 where 50 are required. But today, I'm stuck for words, right? From what you've gone through and the wonderful manner in which you've just recaptured it all for us, right? Absolutely fantastic that you could talk about it in such a detached manner, right? You could have such a perspective to it, right? And then you could present it to us in such a manner itself. Hats off, Anjali. I think on behalf of everybody, I'd like to put my hands together for you for all that you've gone through in life. I mean, I really don't know what to say. And like I say, I'm not usually speechless, right? But I'm really caught speechless today. Thank you so much for taking the time off, spending your time with us. It's not done as yet because I have a whole lot of questions which people have lined up for you, right? And I'd also request others, if you need to ask any questions, please feel free to populate the chat box, right? And we'll pick up questions from there, and then we would ask questions as things go by. But before that, I'm going to leave you with one request, right? If the Learning Festival needs to bring you such wonderful speakers at absolutely no cost, absolutely free of cost, right? If you have to listen to such wonderful speakers, if you want to connect with such fabulous people, I would have only one request with you, right? One is go out and write about with us, right? Write about us. Use the hashtag Learning Festival, right? Tweet about us, Facebook us, wherever, but write about us. Secondly, we're going to throw a link for you on screen, our YouTube link right away. Please take some time, go in there right away, and I want you to subscribe, right? I want you to just subscribe to our channel because such powerful talks are going to be uploaded on our channel, right? All this is a great repository that we are going to be making available on our YouTube channel, right? Once I get appropriate permissions from Anjali, of course, right? Her speech right now will not come there, but we'll have to get appropriate permission from there before we go that route. So I'm going to request you all to take a minute's time. Please click on that particular icon that you see there, the link that you see there, and just subscribe to us because we want to increase our numbers, right? We want to make sure that as a YouTube channel, we can be an influencer. I'll just leave you with that. Back to Anjali. Foof. Anjali, hats off, right? The kind of efforts that you've done, not just in this talk, but the very fact that you've gone through so much, right? I have so many questions lined up. First one is from Mani Nachiappan, right? And he asks a very interesting question. He starts off by saying, you are an inspiring being. He says, you are the strongest species on the planet, right? And he's very sorry to be asking you this, but he wants to know if you could run us through the milestone of your life in pictures. Would that be possible just to run us through the milestones of your life in pictures?
In pictures, that's a very good question. I actually do. I must be frank. I get that from the media a lot. Okay, everybody wants the before and after look. The thing is, though, I have some. This is something that I haven't really because a lot of it was these were very difficult, very adverse times. Especially in and out of hospital and surgeries and things like that. So I have, childhood pictures, and then, there's obviously times when pictures were not really taken, and then there are pictures after the fact. So maybe at another time we could share them, but I don't have pictures off the bat like that. But I must tell you, well done. Does this person work in media?
I'm not too sure. I mean,
it has to be for sure. So no, it's a brilliant question. I'll be honest. I think that at the years in hospital and stuff were actually quite difficult. So I don't think there were any pictures taken at that time except for the ones that were given to my doctor. So
absolutely understandable. Absolutely understandable, Anjali. We've got Sabapati Narayanan with a question, right? He says it's very inspiring to listen to you. Most of us don't lead a storied life the way yours is. Situation for each individual is different and their ability to fight them as well. Given this understanding, are there a few lessons that you would like to share that people can follow to pull themselves out of situations that they find themselves in? Is there anything that you would like to share in terms of your learning, right? How one could pull themselves out of whatever situation one finds themselves in?
I think this is a fantastic question, and I think that this is something that I have asked myself also at many times, like, what is the right thing to do? But I will definitely, my starting point would be acceptance with non-negotiables. Okay, that is definitely the starting point. Even before we embark on issues of resilience, there are certain things that happen to us that cannot be changed. For example, I can't go from pillar to post asking for my vision back. That's not an option. But what I can do is learn to live with it and how best to live with it. So it's I would first say that I think for a lot of people today, we don't discuss acceptance as something that is necessary, and I believe that it's the first step to kind of getting yourself on the road to success or resolution, or to get whatever it is that you're searching for. And most of us are searching for either success or happiness, or some of us call success happiness and happiness success. So it depends, right? So it's but acceptance is one very big part of it. The other is always ask yourself, have you done the best? Have you given it the best effort you can? Because like I had my own journey, somebody else is, writing an exam. Somebody else is fighting through a difficult job situation. Somebody else is, we're all in, challenges are the same they come in different forms, but they feel the same for everyone. So and I think a lot of times people tend to back down before they've given it their best shot. And if they know deep down that they have given it their best shot and it hasn't worked out, the next question is, what else can I do that will make me happy? Because there are 7 ways to get to Rome, right? Like 7, 10, 15 ways. So my other point would be, after acceptance, would be ask yourself to forget about mom, dad, auntie, uncle, teacher. It doesn't matter what they say. You know if you've given it your best shot. And that means spending every moment that you had sweating it, studying it, thinking about it, breathing it. If you have a goal, you have to marry it. There is no other way. Okay, that's the only way I've lived life, and that's the only way I've gotten how far I've gotten. But that's also because, you know, I had, and I don't ever want to call them handicaps, but there were issues, right? So I had to read twice as much or take 3 times as much time as somebody else did to read the same book, but we were both writing the same exam. And you have to remember that the world is not going to cut you a break. So the sooner you realize that, the better for you, because they're going to be in that moment of, oh, pavam, for like a minute. Okay, and then it's old news. So just remember that your problems are yours alone. You can share them with your family, even that to an extent. And then the only person who can find resolution for them, and the only person you should, in fact, lean on is yourself. And remember, there's no such thing as second chances. There are things, there are third chances, there are fifth chances, there are 75,000 chances. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you don't have another shot. You always have another shot. Okay, as long as you and I are walking on this earth, we always have another shot. So I would always suggest, take another swing. Take another swing, as long as you know that is what you want to do. Also, another bit, and I think that this is more for, you know, living in the world we live in today with so many choices and so much noise in the media and, you know, syndication of opinions and things like that. Just remember that your thought process and your belief system has to be authentic to you, right? It can't be Mark Zuckerberg's. Okay, while he has a very cool life, we also don't talk about what he did to get there. Right? So I always say, focus on the process, not the destination. As long as you stick and are committed to the process, you will get where you want to go. Trust me, I have ways more to go. Somebody recently asked me if I wanted to write a memoir. I told them, I said, I'm barely started yet. Talk to me in 50 years. So I'll write a memoir then. Because I'm just excited to know what's next. Because as long as I'm married to the journey, the destination always presents itself. So these are a few of the tips that I have in terms of, you know, dealing with the here and now and remaining present. And, other people call it cool names like mindfulness and stuff. I just tell it the way I see it. But I would say, unless you're married to the goal, you're really not going to get there. And for that, you, rather than reach out, you have to dig deep inside.
I must say, I just can't but admire your positivity, right? It's amazing the way you put a spin to the whole thing. Fantastic, right? And the key word that you said there is acceptance. First, accept where we are, right, before we find a solution. Thank you so much. We're moving on to the next question. You know, we're going to trouble you for some more time, Anjali.
Please, I'm having a great time.
So we've got Dr. Sulabh Chetia who's asked this question, right? He says, your story is inspiring, and I'm wondering, what kept you going through that tough phase so strongly? And how you overcame, if at all you had any depression, how did you overcome that? He's a doctor, so he just wants to know that, if it's okay to share.
Yes, absolutely. So in fact, this is Dr. Tad would be proud of me for saying this. But one thing is, when I'll jump off from acceptance, because we were talking about that earlier. I had to accept, for example, that my experience was traumatic, and hence, was I PTSD? The answer is more than likely to be yes, right? So there's no question of saying, oh, I'm like, there's no issue here. The first thing I did was understand what the condition was. I understood what it had done to me. And I also understood that I lived and continue to live in a heightened state of anxiety and a heightened state of reaction. But as long as I am like, and this is obviously, I didn't learn in a day, like it took some time, but I took time to understand what the mental repercussions were to this entire experience. There's no question of coming out unscathed, right? So the doctor's asking a very good question. So what, more than depression, I think that the first few years, I'll be honest, I lived on adrenaline alone. So I was just on fight, but that's also because the physical onslaught of what was going on was extremely, extremely huge, right? So each surgery was a skull intervention. I had meningitis 3 times. I had run out of veins in my body. They started to tap my foot for veins because my veins had all collapsed since I spent that much time in the hospital. So that part of my life I got past just with brute strength. But when things started to settle and I went to university, and then, I was no longer coming in and out of the hospital, and I started to have to act like, quote unquote, sorry to use this word, normal person. That's when I started to realize that some of my emotions were not exactly the same as other people's. And this was entirely a function of what had happened. So what I did was spend time with my therapist to understand where it had left me. And for me, it has always been a heightened state of anxiety. So I tend to be more worried than most people, and now I've learned to deal with it in an active process. So I know if I feel, say, anxious on a scale of 100, I know that the reality is only 50. So I divide by 2 and react, because I know that what I'm actually experiencing is not necessarily, real, because that's like the PTSD talking. So I'll be honest, I did have my highs and lows in terms of, I wouldn't say depression, but definitely ups and downs emotionally. But I let myself roll through it because, as you know, psychiatry is not an exacting science, sorry to say, but, medication is rife. And, there were times when, and it's not been an easy road. There have been times in the US where I've been on so much medication that I was seeing 2 buses arriving at the stop. And I called my dad in India saying, I can't see, I think there are 2 buses. He said, please go to your doctor and find out what's happening. So yes, we all have that journey. I did have my journey through figuring out what medication would work and what didn't. But now that I'm on, I wouldn't say safely, but somewhat on the other side of things, where I understand what the condition is, I'm not on much medication, and I tend to self-regulate. But not depression as such, but definitely some highs and lows. And mostly for me, it manifests in anxiety.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think that formula that you gave us, right, divided by 2 and then react 50, made a lot of sense. Wonderful. I mean, trust me, as you were talking, I was sharing WhatsApp notes with another good friend called Sailesh, who went through a horrible, his entire family, right, wife and kids, who went through a horrible accident in the year 2007, and he was saying, listening to ma'am gives me such pleasure because I also managed to do all this and I'm out of all that, right? So that's the kind of inspiration that you're bringing to people today, Anjali. Right, let me go on quickly to the next question. This is from Rija, right? She's from the New Indian Model School, Sharjah. She wants to know, and it's the Arthur Ashe kind of question that she's asking. She says, did you ever ask yourself, why me?
Oh, wow. That I do hear that often. And actually, this, and a lot of people have asked me this, I have never actually asked myself, why me? Because I have been so busy with what next. Okay, I am the world's busiest person because I feel like I have the most problems to fix. But that's also because I have an extremely imperfect life, right? So I can't see anything. The driver is never there when I need him because I can't drive anywhere myself, or I'm falling off the stairs, or the font isn't big enough. But trust me, there are a million imperfections in my life on a daily basis, and I'm so busy getting to where I need to be that I have literally, I promise you, never had time to sit and say, why me? And because it's been such a whirlwind of action, and this I will say, because my father and I share this, because we have a very close relationship. And while he was not hurt in the accident, he also had to play the role of Atlas, right? Because he was lifting up the world with me and my mom, and everybody's broken. It's a lot for a man to take. So he always says that the one thing that has gotten me, and I think him, to the next day is always figuring out, what do we need to fix? So, because it's only the broken car that makes you a mechanic, right? Otherwise you don't have a job. You know what I'm saying? So life has always given me somewhere to be, some place to go, something to fix. And I've just been so busy with that I've never really sat with the why me, because I feel it's a bit of a rabbit hole and there are no real answers to be found. And, and now when I'm sitting here and talking to you guys, and I've had, this so-called storied life, there are a lot of people who ask me, like, or think that I have this fabulous existence. And I tell them, I'm just like, you have no idea. So it's no, I think I'm not, why me really hasn't, I've made a conscious effort not to go there. conscious effort.
You have no idea. Fantastic. Let's move on, right? Tell us one day, this is Sham who's asking this question. He says, tell us one day where you felt the fight was over and you was going to, give in, which is not your type really, right? And what was that one thing that gave you the kick to bounce back and get back to the next lap of your race, right? She wants to know if at all you were giving up, and then what made you, get back again?
I think that he's asked a very good question, and I'll take you back to one of my surgeries. This was not the surgery which I quoted, but you remember I told you guys that my doctor said fight 50%, and there was, okay, so now that you've asked, let's bring out the big guns. So I was in hospital for many months, as I told you, and my father had gone back to India, and my jaw was wired shut. So I couldn't speak, I could only hear, and I could see very little. And the nurses used to come in and out of my room, which was, a very bland, boring place, even though it was the ICU, but that's all I knew. And they used to come and change my IVs, and I was stuck to a lot of machines at that time. So there was this one, and my jaw had been wired shut for about close to 8 months. So this means that I had been in silence for about 8 months, and not speaking and being just one with your own thoughts inside your own mind is possibly the most loud experience that anybody can ever have, even though I was silent. And I promise you, it's very interesting. But what happened was, she came in and she was on the phone. She was on the phone to somebody, and I guess she was getting off her shift. And I was looking at her, and I was attached to, the bottles that are there on the trolley next to the bed. And she had to wait, I would say, a couple of minutes to change the bottle. And the bottle and the drips used to come at a certain pressure, obviously, to pressure to go into the vein without blowing it up. So this nurse was in such a hurry to get off her shift that she realized that my mouth was wired shut and I couldn't speak. So I couldn't say anything, even if she released the clip early. So what she decided to do was to decide that waiting for me was not worth her time. And she released the last bit of medication that was in the bottle without waiting and just left the room. And I watched, while I could do nothing about it, I watched the medicine come at the speed that it was now released at to come and blow my vein up. And my entire hand turned black, and the pain I felt was unimaginable. And at that moment, I wondered, I was like, I have no power even over this. I cannot even protest. I just had to sit with that. I had to sit with that vein, which had blown up for the next 12 hours till the next nurse came. And even when the doctors came to wonder what had happened, I had no way to communicate with anybody. So that was probably the one moment when I felt least like a human being. I was just wondering, I was like, if I have nothing left, even to defend myself against this kind of, subversive atrocity, if you will, then what is it worth? And then the thought came, and then it passed. It passed in just a second, and I realized, I was like, I'm going to wait around and probably hunt her down and make her pay, though I never found that nurse again. I think she realized what she had done, because she knew that if I ever found her, she'd be in trouble. But I think that at least I felt at that moment, my sense of the fight that I had, the humanity that I felt that I had, wasn't there for a second, because I realized that there was no one to fight for me. And even at that time, I didn't have a voice to fight for myself. So that came for maybe a second, but I pushed past it. And I think that was the last time, because I was reminded of that 50% conversation that my doctor had with me during the operation that day.
We all talk of and think of helplessness. I don't know how to quantify or even qualify what you just went through, right? What you were speaking about. Amazing. I just have to take a consensus from the house, with Anjali's permission, of course, and with everybody of you. Generally, we wind up in 1 hour. But today, we've got a flood of questions. It's overwhelming, and I wouldn't want to cut it short. It's not going to be fair, because all of us would love to learn from this superhuman. So with the concurrence and consensus of the house, we're going to extend by a little bit, right? And towards the end, we will be coming up with a link wherein you just have to fill in your name and your, whatever details is asked for. Very simple, just your name. And then we would have your e-certificate being mailed into you, right? Towards the end of the whole thing, we would have this link coming up, right, where you just have to give us your name, as you would like to see it on the certificate, and the certificate would be mailed to you, right? Anjali, we continue. Even for you, I'm going to check another 15 minutes. Is that okay, Anjali?
No worries. I'm having fun.
Thank you so much. Very kind of you, right? So quick question from Sundar Vishwanathan. He says, what was or is your motivation, inspiration to this level of resilience? It's a very pointed question.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you what my real motivation is for this level of fight or resilience, if you will, is because I don't feel I am even halfway to my potential yet. I really think, I feel like I have barely broken the barriers that I had set out to myself, whether it be in the corporate world or as perhaps hopefully a change maker in the future. I would like to study more. I would like to travel. I would like to. I believe I have a lot more to accomplish and a lot more to give. And I truly don't. A lot of people ask me if I feel tired. I feel like I've just gotten started. Maybe because my journey, my life journey itself, kicks up so much energy because it takes so much energy. Getting from one day to the next for me is a mission because everything is difficult, right? Getting to the bathroom is difficult. Going down the stairs is difficult. So while I don't engage with the level of difficulty, it also draws on a lot of energy that it takes from me, which I believe is done with a great deal of intention. So I believe that I'm still at a point in my life where I'm still figuring out how much more potential I have and how much further I can go in any of the fields. Let's just say at this point, I would say in the field of business would be one of them. So that is what motivates me. And for me, being precise about every action is very important because to pursue excellence, which is what we discussed, Dr. Tad and I discussed when we began this journey together, is the pursuit of excellence is imbued into my every narrative, into my every part of my story. Is that whatever has happened to me, I still want to be the best of the best. And I have a long way to go to still be the best of the best. There's a lot more work to do, and I'm excited to do it. So that's what motivates me because I just need to get better. I feel I'm ways away from the best of my potential.
And that's fabulous answer. You know, I'm a corporate trainer, right? And I run one module called P2P, which is potential to performance. We call it the 1 degree difference. And this one answer has given me enough meat to run a 2-day module. Trust me, right? That's the kind of stuff that you're giving it out to us, right? Great, thanks, Anjali. Let me move on to a question from Mr. Venkatraman. He says, very inspiring, Anjali, to listen to you. When did this thought come, he says, to pursue your own dream rather than probably the easier path of family business? That's what he wants to know. When did you decide to go on your own rather than just get by with whatever the family was doing?
Yeah, so like I had mentioned earlier, my first job out of undergrad was for a year into my family business. But I'll be honest, working with strong role models my father and I are very similar. Okay, so that can be a good thing and a bad thing. So when I think that I always needed to carve my own niche for myself before I went back to the family business or even chose to go to the family business, because you need to know what your worth is in the world. I wanted to know if I was worth hiring, if I was worth hiring, firing, keeping, promoting, paying. I needed to know the answer to all those questions outside of my family business. And I don't think I would have felt comfortable joining my family business if I did not know the answer to all of those questions. Because I feel like while growing up, I see a lot of people like, I don't want to comment and say it's the easy way or the hard way. I just wanted to do it the right way. And I think the right way for me was to know what my worth was in the world, to even go and have a conversation with the HR in my family business, right? So it's all of us need to learn what we're worth. And I have always looked at my career outside of what has happened to me. What has happened is a different issue. That's my personal problem, okay, which I continue to deal with. But I've not, tried to marry it with my career or a career journey, because in an office, whether it's my family business or my own business, or even say at NDTV where I work, everybody just needs you to do your best. They don't want to hear that you've had this drama and that drama and all of that. So the reason I decided to go my own way first was to see that I was good enough, tough enough, brave enough, and resilient enough to come back to that, to make it through the ladder of the work scenario that we have out there. Now that I am back with my family business, it's because I believe I have something to bring to the table. I have something to bring to the organization to take them to the next level. For example, I work in e-commerce and digital transformation, which I believe is the wave of the future. So given that our company is in retail, and post-COVID, if you can see, e-commerce and omni-channel are the ways of the future. So I believe that I bring something to the table by leading those teams and actually adding value. I don't believe in just being there because I'm somebody's kid. So
wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. That was great. So, quick question from Mr. GSK.
I also, sorry if I may interrupt. I also wanted to point out that my family also is not the type to let me come and sit there unless I had like proved my mettle first. So there's two sides to the coin. Their point of view is also that. So I'm the second generation. So being the daughter of a first generation businessman, you know that first generation fathers are usually very strict, and there is absolutely no difference with mine either.
I must recount at this stage what my dad told me when I said I want to get back to family business. He said, no. When I finished college out of MBA, he said, first do the OPM part, right? And I figured out what. He said, go out and work on the OPM part. And that's when I realized, he said, work on other people's money, right? You earn, you spend, you blow out other people's money and then come back and do stuff with your own business, right? Quick question from Mr. Parimal Tripathi. He says, now this is a very interesting question. This is something which I myself wanted to ask you, right? Can you tell me, apart from your father, right, who is your role model, somebody who inspires you? But first off, we would love to meet your dad one day. It'd be great to meet him, right? I'm going to dial up and say, I want to meet this gentleman straight away. But now the question is interesting. Apart from your father, is there somebody else?
That is a very good question. There have been different people at different times. So, for example, when I was in New York, like I think this would be one example that I think has meant a lot to me and would be worthwhile sharing here. Is when I was in my second year at NYU doing my MS PR and corporate communication, I had a teacher, professor. Her name was Gail Money, and she was about 50, mid-50s, African American woman, partner of this gigantic business called Finn Partners, and which is a global PR agency. And she actually turned out to be my mentor. And she was someone who had actually worked her way up the ranks from being from a minority into a business that is predominantly populated by white males. And she had a wonderful reputation in the business. So I took a class with her. And every year she would award an internship opportunity to the student who topped that class. And I loved that class so much that I did everything in my power to get the grades. So she gave me an opportunity to come and work to take an internship, a partner in training position at Finn Partners in New York, which was, my first big role at a massive global PR company. So in fact, she has inspired, she subsequently suffered a stroke, but still came back to work. This woman is indefatigable. If you think I've got resilience, she's got much more. And, to really be a woman leader in that industry. And she gave me the opportunity to work with, in fact, it was 2012 Olympics. So, and we were taking care of the Jamaican tourist board at that time. So we actually got to work on campaigns which had Usain Bolt and Johan Blake in it. And she would always take time to teach and to mentor outside of her role as a professor. So I would say that's somebody who has inspired me a lot besides my dad, which is a much more close to home story.
Fantastic, lovely. Quick question from Mr. GSK. He wants to know, this is interesting. He says, what role does resilience play in emotional quotient and economical quotient? That's a very tricky but interesting question.
Yeah, very tricky and very well thought out, I must say. We have all geniuses in the house. So it's, I think it's very interesting because with EQ, okay, especially when we're running teams, for example, since so many of you are from business, and I run my own teams within Chennai, also all over the East, and, the retail teams are usually far off, and we're all expected to have a sense of empathy, right, when it comes to other people's, especially your team's problems or things that people face. So I think when you have some understanding of resilience, you can, you're able to calibrate your empathy as well. In terms of, one is to empathize and, sort of make space for people's issues, but the other is to give them the strength that it takes to overcome it. So I think that resilience and one's own understanding of resilience is critical to EQ, especially in teams, or especially in the case of mentorship. Because what do we do as leaders? We have to provide perspective, right? And the situation is as big or as small as you see it. So while we have young team members struggling with family problems, and somebody's mother-in-law died, or someone's wife lost their job, for everyone it is their catastrophe, right? So as leaders with resilience and having some experience with resilience ourselves, we can come in, one, to empathize and to support, but also provide a certain level of perspective. And in terms of economics, I think, if you have the right kind of EQ matched with resilience, the economics will work themselves out.
Absolutely. Interesting. Friends, at this stage, I'm going to take one last question. There's so much more coming up, but then it's time for Whistle Podu also, right? That's what we all have. So I'm going to take one last question. But before that, just a reminder, right? We'd like those of us who are on Zoom, like I said, the third difference is this. Today, we're doing webinar plus Zoom. Some of us are on Zoom and many of us are on webinars. So at least those of us who are on Zoom, if you could keep your videos switched on, it will be one grand opportunity to get a pic with Anjali, right? One group pic with Anjali. That's something that's going to be real memory, right? So if you can all just switch on a video before I go into the last question, right? And my colleague Sai is going to help us with that one group pic. Before I move into the last question, we'll just give it a minute for that.
All tech geniuses here in the house. Take photographs and stuff.
Okay, so let's move on to the last question. And this is the last question for the session. After which we're going to give you the link to the certificate. And sorry to all the others, right? My apologies that we couldn't take many of the other questions, because yes, there is a time limit and it wouldn't be fair to, take too much of Anjali's time also, right? So this is, I sort of know, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to still ask you this, right? In your entire journey, Anjali, what was your wow or aha moment for yourself, right? And from a self perspective, what was that wow moment?
I think my aha moment, and this was, I would say, a little bit earlier on, because once resilience became part of the game and, I started playing to my strengths, things got better. But my biggest aha moment was when I finished my undergraduate education. People had not given me a chance to get out of that wheelchair, forget about go to college, forget about living on my own. I had lived on my own for 4 years. I had done every class. I didn't drop a single class, and I still graduated with honors. And I could not believe that I had actually blown through that wall, that restriction, that people had told me my life was over. And suddenly I realized that my life was just beginning. Once I did that, I realized I could just keep running faster and faster. And nothing that anybody else told me was actually real. Until then, I kept believing that maybe this would not happen. Maybe I would fall down somewhere. Maybe I would fall short of energy. Maybe I wouldn't be able to see well enough. Maybe I wouldn't be able to study well enough. Maybe I wouldn't be able to manage. Maybe I would fall down on the street somewhere and nobody would find me. But somehow I made it through those 4 years, and that to some of the most premium institutions. And I walked away with a degree. And that was the first time, my biggest aha, that I knew. I was like, girl, I think you have a bigger life coming.
Girl, trust me, you have a great life coming, right? That's what I've got to say, right? In closing, I don't think I'm going to belittle this whole thing by thanking you, Anjali, because like you rightly said, it's your giving back, right? We are just going to say that we've been privileged to listen to you, right? And before I go that route, Sai, can we just play up the link for people to fill in their names so that the certificates will get immediately mailed to you, maybe within the first 10 minutes itself, right? We've tried to automate that process. We have a couple of geniuses here, Venki and Ganesh, they've been working on it. So we will get it out to you between 10 minutes to 1 hour max, right? So that's the link out there. I think it's tough to close a session like this, right? It's really tough to close such a power-packed session, right? There's so much has come up, right? And it's really difficult that we have to actually come to an end. But yes, we have to come to an end. Like I said, she has other priorities. She would have many more things to do. So it's also good that we close, at the appropriate time. Before closing, I must thank a few people. I'm not going to thank Anjali. I'm not going to thank Anjali at all, because I'm going to say we've been privileged to listen to you, Anjali, and that's my line, right? I liked it when you said calibrating one's empathy. There are so many powerful lines that you spun off for us today. But I'd like to thank Wellbe Work for partnering with us for this particular program. I'd like to thank a couple of institutions, quite a few institutions who've come forward and made sure that their, delegates have participated here, starting with Provet Pharma, the Ethraj College, Panimalar College, the New Indian Model School, Sharjah, quite a few institutions who, really been good at, saying, yes, we want to listen to this lovely superhuman and we want to be there. So, it is with these thoughts that, I feel bad that the session, I didn't know, 5:30 to now just flew by. Thank you so much, everyone, right? Especially you, Anjali, right? You've taken so much of time, right? And spent that quality time with us. It's a big, big, big thing from us, right? On behalf of the Learning Festival team, we'd like to thank everybody, especially Anjali. Any last words? And we'll close. If you'd like to say some last words, Anjali. Like I said, I don't want to thank and belittle this moment. I am super enthused by this whole thing. And girl, you have a long way to go.
A long way to go, right? So, I just wanted to end on, since resilience is being, talked about so much, and I've shared my journey with you, and I'm sure every one of your journeys is as real in terms of, how emotional it is, the kind of grief you feel, the kind of loss you feel. I only leave you with this, saying acknowledge the feeling, if it is sadness or loss or grief, but just remember it's a visitor. It's not here to stay. It has no place in your house. It has no rent. Okay, just say hello, give it a cup of coffee, and show it the door. So I definitely say acknowledge it, because if you don't, you'll end up worse off, because then we don't want to bottle up our feelings. But don't give it any more time than a cup of coffee. Okay, so I'm just saying that it's very normal and it's very real, and I don't mean that resilience means don't feel anything. You will feel. Feeling is very natural, but some of us tend to let it overstay its welcome. So that choice is always yours, and don't let it stay too long. Is my only wish and my prayer for all of you.
Anjali, powerful, powerful words indeed. I'm not going to spoil the moment by saying anything more. Very powerful, those last thoughts from you. Friends, let's move on, right? It's time to disconnect. Thanks again, everybody. I'm not going to say anything more. Maybe it's time to move on to whistle Podu time. Good luck, CSK. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.